why traders don't use stops. Hi, it's Charlie giving you Saturday's video, and I hope you're very well. So, why is it that traders don't use stops? Now, what I want to do is just clarify why that some people don't use stops, and there can be legitimate circumstances when you wouldn't use stops, like with some sort of correlation type strategies and hedging strategies. So, I'm not saying that there wouldn't be certain reasons why some traders wouldn't use stops, because you could be buying different asset classes, buying one, selling another, and they're offsetting each other a bit. So that's different. What I'm talking about here is traders taking directional trades and not using stops. So why do they do that? By all means, put a comment in the comments in the boxes below. I'm going to give you a couple of situations, and by all means add to that, because I always appreciate any of your comments on these. So the first one, I've written down just a 3 here. Oh no, that's 3, and not that. And so the need to be right. So yeah, ego. The need to be right. I've been there many years ago. My ego in trading, I was always a greed-based trader, and I remember in my early years there would be times where I just wouldn't put a stop in, and you learn from those experiences because you end up thinking, oh my god, I'm gonna have to get out. And so there is this ego side of things, but fortunately for me, I would get out. I learned my lesson very early on in my first year of trading. But what you do find is that people have this ego where they just feel that they are right, and they have this need to be right to themselves. They're not necessarily trying to prove this to anyone else. And so that desire to be right is, if they have a stop loss and they get stopped out, then they're proven to be wrong on the trade, so to speak. They don't want that because they have this bigger picture view, and the market's going to go up. And I have views on the markets all the time, and a lot of the time my views will be correct, but you only need to be not correct a very small percentage of the time, only once in fact, and you'll end up blowing up. Because what can happen is, on that one occasion, and this is the difficulty with not using stops, you can actually make a lot of money in the market by not using stop losses, because a lot of the time you get away with it. If you just take this chart here as an example, I can bring my pen up here. If we take this chart as an example, generally speaking, the S&P here has been going up, hasn't it, forever? And so if wherever you were buying, provided you held on for long enough, it's going to come back up again. Yeah. So even if you bought up at this high up here, if you're not using stops, you're going to sweat for a long time, then it eventually comes up. Now, as long as you don't exceed your margin levels, then you're going to get away with it, sort of thing. And so that's the sort of thing that can happen. So people will get away with it, and they'll think, why would I ever bother using stops? Because I'm always right on my strategy. But as we've seen over the years, right the way back to long-term capital management in '98, and many examples over the years where people thought, and some of the cleverest minds in the world thought they had a bulletproof strategy, and then something comes along which might disrupt it. And if you don't have a contingency plan, i.e. something like a stop loss, then at some point it's going to come back and bite you. So, for example, we all know at some point in the future, the stock market will have a mighty old bear market again. We don't know when, but it'll happen. Now, if you were one of those people who were just trading and buying the dips or buying breakouts and getting away with it, even if it does dip down a bit and then coming back up, and you just think you're infallible, and yes, you're making money, and then all of a sudden a bear market comes, and some really heavy volatility and a bear market, doesn't matter how much money you've made, let's say in the past 3 years, if all of a sudden that comes and you think it's going to turn back around and it doesn't, and you get stuck in that position, and what happens is people get wedded to it, because you'd be like, oh no, but I would come out. No, you don't, because what you've done is you've cemented into your subconscious that holding on to these positions is the way to go, and you will find it almost impossible to cut the position. So this is what people do, and then they end up just blowing up. So what's the point in turning 10,000 into 50,000 by having a strategy like that without a stop loss, if ultimately you're going to blow it all up? yeah, look good for a few years, but ultimately that lack of a stop loss is going to cost you. So that's one thing. I think another one I've written down here is a fear of being stopped out only to see price go up in your direction again, and that's a very common one. So I keep looking at the charts here just to see what's going on, because I'm filming this whilst the markets are live here this afternoon. You can see the stock markets are selling off today. It's a very common one, because especially with newer traders, and when I say newer trader, I'm talking about anyone who's been trading, up to sort of 2 to 3 years can come into that bracket, where you might have actually built some experience, and then you just get to a point you're like sick of being stopped out, only to see the market go back in your direction. And then you start to say, oh, I'm not going to put a stop loss in next time. I always say the market is there to teach you bad habits, because what he's trying to do, what that market, he or she, by the way, the market, or they, is trying to do is entice you in. It's like the devil. It's trying to entice you in to doing those bad things. And time after time, I got stopped out again. Look, only to see it go higher. And then ultimately you think, no, I'm not gonna use stops anymore, because it always goes higher. And then of course, you start not using stops. Maybe it works for a while, and then ultimately that same scenario happens again. There's this time it just keeps on going down. It doesn't turn around and go back in your direction. So that's another one. And I think another one is when people absolutely believe they are right on that particular piece of analysis, let's say. And I've come across traders over the years who have done that. I think you have to have belief and conviction in the analysis you're doing and trade that, but you still have to have those cutoffs there for if that's wrong. And that is always going to happen, that you're going to not always be right in that. But unfortunately, people get really wedded to an idea. I remember many years ago, we're talking 2004, 2005, a trader emailed in, and back then, and he had become obsessed with, fun enough, with the S&P, and thought the S&P was going to crash. He was using GAN, I think it was, GAN theory, and was obsessed. All the fib projections and everything else were all in alignment. And so he was so obsessed that he actually remortgaged his house, didn't tell his wife, remortgaged his house, and put that into this massive position on the S&P. And you can guess what happened. The S&P just went up and up and up, because the S&P had bottomed in 2002. So yeah, it might have even been 2003 actually that he emailed us, because he was still thinking that it was going to roll over again, and he had all these projections. And so again, you have such a belief, such a conviction that you're right, that you go and do that. And I had another one. Someone emailed or got in touch with me a few years ago, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago now. Lily, someone I've interviewed before, one of her trader friends, this is going, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago. If you go to our website and go to our interviews, you'll see some interviews I've done with Lily. But anyway, it was a trader friend of hers who was new, and he got wedded to a pound-dollar trade and sold a yacht. Not a massive yacht. It was like, it was a, I don't know, maybe £80,000 yacht, because he lost money, and he was so convinced that this pound-dollar was going to do this move that he thought it was going to do, that he even sold his boat to refund his account to go and do that. Well, you can guess what happened there as well. So don't ever underestimate the power of the dark side. That's the main rule that I would give to you when it comes to trading without stops. And yourself, that inner demon that can come out as a result of getting stopped out, and then you take that one decision not to use a stop on one occasion, and then it goes, and then you can't bring yourself to come out thinking, oh, it'll bounce, and it doesn't. And it'll be that one occasion where that happens, and you're in a heck of a whole world of trouble. Anyway, those are my thoughts there today. If you've got anything you want to add to that, by all means pop it in the boxes below. As always, give us a thumbs up, and do subscribe to the channel for more videos if you don't already. Take care for now. Enjoy your weekends.